All right. Yes, sir. We are live here. Moneyline MMA coverage of UFC 312. Coming off of a decently good card. Of course, in Saudi Arabia, Strickland and Plessis will be headlining UFC 312 for us. A rematch for the middleweight belt. And the co-main event also provides us a championship bout between Tatiana Suarez and Weili Zhang with the women's strawweight belt. So we're getting a double belt fight card here, pay-per-view. This will be in Sydney, Australia, but we're going to be getting it at our normal USA time zones. So that's pretty good. I know there have been a few cards now over in that area of the world, and the fighters seem to, at least when Aspinall was over there, he was trying to lobby towards time change because I believe like local time, this is going to be like 5 a.m. Or something like that. I could be a little bit off on that exact time, but it's not going to be a great time for them in terms of when would you want to fight if you could choose. But in any case, they're going to have to switch up their sleep schedules and get ready. And we're going to have to do nothing else because we're going to get the card starting at 5 p.m. at normal time with the prelims. And it should be a 9 p.m. Central Time main card start. I will say, outside of the main two fights, it's a little underwhelming. I'm not going to come to the UFC's defense and act like putting UFC newcomers on the main event of pay-per-view is awesome. And that's just that. I do hold the UFC to a higher standard. But before we get too deep into this upcoming card, let's check the past card and see how we did. Jose and I, well, honestly, we kind of had different nights last week. At least it wasn't crazy different. I got 3 wins, 2 losses. Jose got 2 wins, 3 losses. So one fight difference there. But in terms of the disagreements, Jose had Said Nurmagomedov, who lost to Vinicius Oliveira. I was very excited. He was only my 1 weight, but I'll take that win. That was Jose's 4 weight on Said, and Oliveira just did a great job. But Jose did win the head-to-head of Fares Ziam versus Mike Davis. But if we look at that replay, man, a lot of the highlights on Twitter and whatnot from that fight is that Mike Davis, first of all, went in clinch like right away, which is really rare. And like during the scramble, it ended up that Ziam had his leg stuck in this really terrible spot in between Mike Davis's leg, and it was like torquing his knee in just like a severe way, it looked like. And I don't know, man, if that was me, man, my knee would have been blown out. I would have had to skip leg day for a couple of weeks, you know what I'm saying, to let that thing heal. But somehow, props to Ziam for fighting through that, not letting it affect him, at least not enough to still get the win. So Jose wins that one. But the third head-to-head, which involved my 5-weight pick, MVP. Got to mention MVP versus Shara. Shara was only Jose's number 1 weight, so Jose did not have like a whole bunch of confidence on it by any means. But wow, did MVP pretty much do exactly what I thought he might be able to do and kind of just outbox Shara. You know, some of the striking numbers, you could argue, they do fall in Shara's favor, right, in terms of strikes landed in a couple. And I think the second round, for sure, he won strikes. But even then, like, that doesn't mean you win the round. I think MVP did a much better job of having a game plan for Shara's kicks. Like I was kind of telling Jose when we were talking earlier, it felt like MVP was doing a really good job of what he was doing is like throwing a quick jab or just a quick stiff shot every time Shara was going to start doing a spinning move or a kick or something. And I just could tell that it started to wear on Shara, and he's like, well, I'm not just going to keep throwing these kicks if I just get punched in the face every time. So I really think little things like that, and of course just MVP is so agile. His ability to evade, like I can't tell you how many times he was back against the offense because Shara was the one stepping forward, and he would just kind of go left, right, and then like dodge right as Shara's like coming in with a back fist, and it just felt like it was like inches from landing on MVP, but MVP just is like normal, like, yeah, you know, that's just me. That's why he's my 5-weight, man. I still had faith that MVP is a top level fighter, and he proved that by reminding Shara that there's some levels here, and Shara's going to still have to improve his game to be a real contender. But that's really pretty much the sum up. Of course, Izzy lost. Don't want to sit here and talk too much about that. Sucks to see Izzy lose. You know, I believe he won the first round. Still got KO'd though, so it's bad luck. And you know, at this point, I kind of just hope Izzy finds one more fight that he can get a win. and fall off on a shield kind of thing. Just get a win, retire. That would be the best, I think, outcome for his legacy. But we'll see what kind of fighter he is. He wants his legacy to be. Maybe he's feeling it in his bank account and needs some money. Who knows? But I'd like to think he gets a win and retires and kind of just lets these younger guys take over. But speaking of younger guys, we're going to move on to the event for Saturday afternoon and talk about, of course, one of our picks will be on the main event between the belt that Izzy lost and held for so long. So it's really sad to see. And crazy, it makes me feel like I'm getting older too fast to see the guard change in a division like middleweight, where it used to literally be Israel Adesanya and everybody else, including Robert Whittaker. But nowadays, Robert Whittaker is kind of even falling off too, and even Robert Whittaker isn't the number 2 anymore. He's like maybe top 5, maybe. So man, what a crazy turn this division has taken. That said, as a reminder to anyone who is new here, we do our picks in a 5-weight system, in which of the 13 scheduled fights for UFC 312, Jose and I pick 5 of them, irregardless of main event or prelim, and we weigh those picks in order of confidence, with 5-weight being the most confident, 1-weight being the least confident. So of course 5-weight means it's our lock of the week, and 1-weight is our least confident of those 5 picks. And we're going to start with our most confident picks. So that said, we do discuss our picks right before the show just to know what order we're going in. But outside of that, we don't discuss these picks. We make these picks individually. So any contradictions or agreements, we only learn about just before recording. So that said, my 5-weight, my lock of the week for Saturday afternoon, is going to be on the prelims. Actually, this is a card, like I kind of mentioned earlier, it's a little underwhelming outside of the main 2 championship fights. And honestly, those 2 championship fights, I think we can both agree, I have some arguments on both sides. I think there really is a good competition there, and it's not going to be a situation where it's like huge favorites in either of those fights. I guess Dricus is over a 2-1 favorite now, but I don't know, that feels a little bit steep. But that's not the fight we're talking about right now. I'm going to be talking about Kevin Jousset, the Frenchman, coming off of a loss. I'm going to be picking him as my 5-weight of Saturday afternoon. Kevin Jousset, like I said, he's coming off a loss. He's fighting Jonathan Micallef, I believe is how you say that. I might be saying that wrong, but he's coming off a loss versus Brian Battle. I picked Brian Battle in that fight. I feel like I have a good pick on Jousset, kind of a good gauge on who he is, what kind of fighter he is. I think he was doing decent against Brian Battle. Of course, he got outstruck pretty heavily, but it was really the aggressiveness. I think Brian Battle is just a madman, continued to push forward, and ended up getting that KO win just by being relentless. But I don't know, Jousset's a really tough guy in my opinion. I don't think Micallef, I don't know, man. He's definitely probably going to go and try shooting for takedowns, right? At this point, he's got his Dana White Contender Series win was a submission. It's hard to say. Maybe he doesn't go shoot right away. Obviously, I'm not in his camp. I don't know his game plan, but I have the tendency to think this stays on the feet. Jousset, even if Micallef wants to try and take Jousset down, he hasn't been taken down yet in the UFC in his 3 fights. So I think, not to say Micallef can't take him down, but I just don't think it will be easy. I think Jousset has good wrestling defensively, and he'll be able to find his way back to the feet and win this by either decision or KO. Any thoughts, Jose?
Yeah, Nick. So I actually do not have a pick on this fight, but I agree with you. I do like the Kevin Jousset pick a lot, and as you mentioned, yeah, he's looked good up until he ran into Brian Battle, but Brian Battle, he's been like a personal favorite of mine, and we've picked him a lot, including that fight. We picked him, and so that being said, no shame in that. Brian Battle's just been on a complete tear. So I think in this matchup, I agree with you. I think he's gonna be the better fighter. I just don't know the exact method I think he would win. But that being said, I didn't have a pick on this one, but I am leaning towards Kevin Jousset as well.
Sounds good, and he is. I think I mentioned it, but just to be sure, Kevin Jousset is the favorite in this fight. Trying to get the exact odds. It doesn't seem to be. Oh yeah, there it is. He's minus 250 on FanDuel. So 2.5, 2.5 to 1 would be the ratio on that. Favorite, pretty favorite to win the fight, but I think it happens. Obviously, 5-weight pick, and we'll move on to your 5-weight.
Yes, so for my five weight, this seems to be one of the bigger favorites on the card. Besides the main event, but this is the uh, uh, matchup between Rodolfo Bellato and Jimmy Crute. And right now, Bellato is the betting favorite at minus 166, while Jimmy Crute is the betting underdog at plus 130. This one, Bilal's been on a complete tear. He's got two back-to-back second-round finishes, and in general, like he's looked really good. Just except Vitor Petrino, who he himself is really is obviously has been looking really good. And other than that, that's really the only dude he's actually lost to in his entire record is just Vitor Petrino. And so this one, it's gonna be hard for me not to side with him, especially just because like he's got those wins, and then Jimmy Crute is just on a he's lost three and he has a draw in the middle. And it was against Alonzo Menifield, who he eventually, in the rematch, Alonzo Menifield finished him via guillotine in the second round. So Jimmy Crute's just not been looking too good as of lately, and both guys are relatively young. I think Rodolfo Bilal has still like a more to give to the UFC versus where I think Jimmy Cruz almost, I don't want to say he's ran his course, but he's already been with the UFC for a while, and he's just gotten a good amount of losses. But he has some notable wins like over Paul Gregg, Sam Alvey, Michael Olajaychuk. But he just can't seem to like win against some of these other dudes that are just I mean Jamal Hill, okay, that's another one too. I'll give him that. And Anthony Smith. Like Anthony Smith is kind of like this was in 2021, so Anthony Smith was probably a little better there. But in this one, I think just the time is looking better for Rodolfo Bellato. I think he in this one will get the win. I think he may even get a finish as well, just because Jimmy Crute has been. He's actually never. All his losses have never come by decision. He's always been finished. And I'm not saying like never say never, but Rodolfo Bellato he is a finisher though himself. Out of his 12 wins, he's got 7 KOs and 4 submissions. He's only gone to decision once. So I think this is a safe one to say that if he wins, it's probably going to be via finish. And if Jimmy Crute loses, I think it's safe to say he's going to be the one to get finished. And then how they match up stylistically is Rodolfo Bellato does have a 3.5 reach advantage over Jimmy Crute, and he throws a high volume of punches. So that being said, like he does land some, he can get a little reckless and does take some back, but I think in this matchup, just his aggressiveness and reach advantage will play a role in getting a finish over Jimmy Crute. So this one, I feel really strong about Rodolfo Bellato. That's why he's my 5 weight. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
Man, honestly, I think that's a great pick. I don't have a weight on it myself, and honestly, reevaluating some of my weights, I would probably move in that direction first for sure. I think Bellato is great value too. Looking at it, he's not even as big of a favorite as, excuse me, as Juicette is at minus 166. But I think the value is insane there. Jimmy Crute is a good name and all that, but he hasn't fought since July. I guess that's not too big of a layoff. But he's getting finished by Alonzo Menifield. He's getting finished by Jamal Hill. Like, yeah, those are good fighters. So it's not that big of a deal. But we look at some of the guys he's beaten, and it's like, okay, but they're not really that great either. So yeah, I'd agree, man. I think Bellato, he's also got a little bigger of a frame, which I like. And in all reality, if Jimmy Crute wants to try and go for a wrestling game plan, I would like to think it's a similar situation with Bellato as it is as Juicette, where it's like they're maybe not the best wrestlers, but I'd assume that they're going to have enough of a wrestling defense, ability to sprawl and prevent takedowns to at least keep it standing, in which I believe Bellato's got a good advantage.
Yes, yeah. So this one, yeah, you don't have a pick on it, but yeah, this one, a strong pick of mine, and yeah, Rodolfo Bellato, I'm excited about him. He's my 5 weight.
Man, so that'll bring us to our 4 weight, and honestly, just a preface, like anyone who's usually listened to this show will realize that a lot of times for Jose and I, it's pretty similar, pretty common, I would say, that we pick like a few of the same fights, and maybe we talk like 7 total fights at most, like on a card. But in this one, we'd have to count, but I think it's 8 or 9 at least different fights. We've kind of sprinkled ourselves through this card pretty well, just because it's not really like a top heavy card by any means. So after the last 2 fights, it's kind of a crapshoot from there. But that said, I'm going to go with one of those crapshoot fights. This is one that does make me nervous. There's a reason I couldn't make my 5 weight because I want that to be the guarantee of the week, and I just couldn't guarantee this one. But in the end, I really do have a lot of confidence in it, hence the 4 weight. And that's still going to be, believe it or not, a UFC debut outside of the Contender Series. Taliesin Teixeira as the feature fight against Justin Tafa. And honestly, man, this is just a kind of a big handicap against Justin Tafa too. I'm really not gonna sit here and say many positive things at all about Taliesin Teixeira. He's on his UFC debut, and in all reality, he makes me nervous. Right? He's got 7 total professional MMA fights. I'm sure he's got experience outside of MMA in terms of combat sports, but it makes me nervous for sure. He gets a Contender Series knockout, and all of a sudden he's coming into being a feature fight on a pay-per-view event. It just does seem a little bit rushed, right? And one of the only other things I could argue liking about it is he is a minus 150 favorite, so that's really not too intense at all. That's a fair price to pay for a guy on his debut. As bad of a guy as a fighter as Tafa is, man. Like I said, this isn't as much gloating on Teixeira as it is just being confident against Tafa. If Teixeira is anything more than a bottom end prospect, he's going to beat Justin Tafa. It's that simple. I don't want to talk too bad on the guy, but his wins are only against UFC bottom feeders that end up getting cut. And I just think that's going to continue to be Justin Tafa's MO in the UFC. So if I end up being wrong about this 4-weight, which I'm pretty sure I won't be, Taliesin Teixeira is a complete bust. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, this one. So I do not have a pick on this fight. It's really tough because, like, yeah, I just think it's so weird just putting guys making their debut on a pay-per-view, and then if they do it, like, I thought it would be like, it's gonna be someone like a Michael Chandler, someone maybe more established, and they're gonna make their debut against someone in the top 5. But this is it just seems like it was just slapped on to be slapped on, and I just don't want to. It's just too risky because Teixeira is a mammoth compared to Tafa. He's huge, but I'm sure Justin Tafa is, this is nothing new to him. Even though he is 6 foot and he has a 7'4" reach, it's just Taliesin Teixeira being 6'7" and having an 83" reach is just. It's just overall he's just a mammoth compared to Tafa. But again, Tafa is a heavyweight and he's got strong knockout power, and we've seen him put it to good use. And there's been many times where dudes not as big as their opponents still can put them out, like Derek Lewis to Alexander Volkov, and back in the day, Mark Hunt, similar style to Justin Tafa. He's gonna stand up with you, and he's gonna throw heavy haymakers, and if he throws leg kicks, those are going to be pretty brutal as well. But you won't have to worry and expect him to wrestle you or anything. It's just going to be if he connects, and he could possibly put Teixeira out. So that's why, that's the only worry. It's heavyweights. They're going to clang and bang, but I will lean towards Teixeira. If I had to make a pick, I will lean towards him. I've never really seen him fight, to be honest. Don't know really much about him. But if he's a heavyweight and he has that much of a reach advantage over his opponent, like a 9-inch reach advantage is insane. Combined with some heavyweight power to back it up, he can be a real threat in the heavyweight division. But I think I definitely need to see more of him. So hopefully next time I do have a pick on him. So I have no pick, but I am leaning towards Taliesin Teixeira, literally due to his size, and obviously the UFC must see something at least in him where they think it's worth it. But worth it putting him as and the main card for a pay-per-view. So that being said, I do like your pick with Taliesin Teixeira.
Yeah, sounds good, man. I think those are fair points, right? And it kind of goes back to the start of my handicap where it's like, yeah, man, I can't quite guarantee this one. If I was able to see a little bit more of Teixeira, I might be able to guarantee it. But in the meantime, and I'm with you, in the meantime, until we get that guaranteed debut where he beats Tafa, I mean, maybe he doesn't get the KO, but if he gets like a unanimous win, 30-27, by all 3 judges or something, I think we can kind of rely on Teixeira, but we'll have to see from there. But yeah, that said, we can move on to your 4-weight.
So for my 4-weight, this is the welterweight bout between Jake Matthews and Francisco Prada. Right now, Jake Matthews is a betting favorite at minus 235, while Francisco Prado is the betting underdog at plus 180. This one, I am going with the favorite, Jake Matthews. He's coming off a win over Philip Rowe most recently. Came off unanimously last June, and he's been kind of like he's been on a win loss since he's fought Diego Sanchez in 2020. And so yes, and so has Francisco Prado, but not as much as he's not had that type of pattern in his record as compared to Jake Matthews. But Francisco Prado did go 3 rounds with Daniel Zellhuber, and Daniel Zellhuber, even though he himself is coming off a loss most recently, he was looking really good though, in the UFC, and I think he's still a prospect. He's 25, still got a lot, so no shame in losing to him. I think this is going to be a banger of a fight, and this one would have actually been one where I wouldn't have been surprised that Francisco Prado could have been a favorite as well, but he's a plus 180 underdog. There's a lot of value in Francisco Prado, but I like Jake Matthews a lot, just in terms of I think in this one he's probably going to just be the better grappler overall against Francisco Prado. I think Francisco Prado, what he brings is going to be good striking. But I think Jake Matthews, he's just a little more experienced as well than Francisco Prado. I think that he is just, as long as he doesn't get knocked out or put to sleep by Francisco Prado, I think Jake Matthews will have this via unanimous decision. And the thing is, Francisco Prado, he likes to be on the feet and throw a lot, but he does leave himself open to be hit as well, and he does get clipped, as we've seen, and against even the Daniel Zellhuber fight. Daniel Zellhuber also did have a reach advantage over him, but he does. Francisco Prado has a win over Otman Azatar, and I think that looks good as well. So this one, I just think Jake Matthews is gonna out grapple him, and then maybe not outstrike him, but when he does hit him, I think it's gonna clip. And I don't know if it'll be enough to put out Francisco Prado, but Francisco Prado, he absorbs 5.66 strikes per minute, at least thus far in his short time in the UFC. He's just kind of shown he's got to keep his hands up and have better defense, and I think Jake Matthews could capitalize off that. Jake Matthews does have a 4-inch reach advantage as well, and I am a little biased. I do like strikers that have the longer reach advantage, and last week, that's something I thought about. Charles was my one weight, but MVP had a longer, it was taller and had a longer reach advantage, and I should have just known if it's gonna come down to that and be a point game, the guy with the longer reach will probably he most of the time he seems to be winning. And I think in this one it may come down to that. No one's gonna finish each other. This is just how I view it. I just think it's gonna come down unanimous decision for Jake Matthews. Do you have any opinions on this fight, Nick?
Man, so in terms of this fight, man, we're gonna continue with the fights that we don't have an official pick on. It feels weird. I feel like one of these times I'm gonna have an opinion on yours, you're gonna have an opinion on mine. But for now, that isn't the case. I don't have an official pick on this fight, but I would lean with you on Jake Matthews here. I do have a lot of respect for Prado, which is part of the reason. I think his loss to Zellhuber was tough. I think that's a tough guy to lose to, so I don't knock him as much. Jake Matthews is a great fighter too, but he's had his down moments, losing to Semmelsberger, Michael Morales. Those aren't the best losses to take, so I'm kind of indifferent on both these guys, but I would lean with Jake Matthews if I had to pick.
Yeah, awesome. And then it seems like most people agree too, just based off the odds. But again, I do see value in Francisco Prado, but this is one I agree. In terms of I feel really good with Jake Matthews. He's my 4-weight. You don't have a pick on this one, but you do lean towards that way as well. So that means that is my 4-weight.
Sounds good. In that case, we'll move on to my 3-weight, and that's going to be the co-main event of Saturday afternoon. We're going to get to one of the 2 belt fights right now for my 3-weight, and partially for value and partially for confidence here, I'm taking Weili Zhang to retain the women's strawweight championship belt of the UFC and be the baddest woman in the strawweight division, or really one of the baddest women on the planet in general. Weili Zhang obviously doesn't really need an introduction. It's kind of insane, her resume at this point, and how many times she has won the belt. She's won it, she's defended it, she's lost it, she's won it again. Weili Zhang has just been there and done that for years now in the UFC, and I feel like is one of the more consistent fighters too, right? Like in terms of you know what you're getting, and it's an intense fighter. She's got an insane 2.5 strikes landed versus strikes absorbed differential. That is nuts. She lands 2.5 takedowns per 3 minutes, 3 rounds, excuse me. Of course, this is a 5-round fight. So who knows? I mean, Zhang Weili is just nuts. Tatiana Suarez is also nuts. She has never lost a fight, especially in the UFC. She's just been dominating fighters. She's submitted former champ Alexa Grasso. She's submitted multiple other fighters, including Jessica Andrade. So both of these girls are insane. There's no doubt about it. And Tatiana Suarez is fully deserving of this belt, or at least the chance for this belt. So therefore, that's partially why it's only my 3-weight. I have more confidence in Weili Zhang, but Tatiana Suarez is a beast on the ground. And one of the things that, to me, if Weili Zhang is going to be smart, or in my opinion, it's like maybe like a counteracted kind of game plan. If I was Weili Zhang, I would consider offensively wrestling Tatiana Suarez somewhat early. I would consider it because I think if you're offensively wrestling and if you feel confident in being able to win wrestling exchanges, you can keep yourself out of getting submitted, right? And from there, you can kind of establish dominance. I really think Weili Zhang might want to try something like that, but that's dangerous. That's dangerous. But in any case, Tatiana Suarez can swing too. She's knocked out Carla. Okay, Carla Esparza is like, okay, I don't know how big of a knockout that is. Carla Esparza is kind of a wrestler. But in any case, I'd argue that Tatiana's probably got just as much, if not more, knockout power than Zhang Weili, just based on what we've seen so far. Although Weili Zhang did knock out Jessica Andrade and Tatiana Suarez submitted her. So either way, that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that I like the value you're getting on Weili Zhang, the current champ with the experience she has as an underdog. I mean, that's insane. I don't know how much more we need to say other than that. I mean, that to me is nuts. And it's not plus money. It's minus 102 for Weili, and it's minus 125 for Suarez. So it's a very close line there, and you're not getting quite plus money on Weili, but I just think the value's there. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, Nick, I agree with you. There is good value in Zhang Weili, but I'm going with Tatiana Suarez on this one. I like Tatiana Suarez a lot, and she's just such a dominant wrestler, and she's got great submission skills as well. Half of her wins come via submission. She's only got two KO/2 KO/slash TKOs. And the thing is, too, I think like her record, she either could have been champ by now, or she just at least have definitely more wins on her record because she's just not as active and has been as active due to injuries. So as you can see, like there's some years where she's just completely gone, but every time she comes back, she comes back and she beats someone who is just high caliber, like Alexa Grasso, Jessica Andrade, Carla Esparza as well. Like these are all former champs. So she just comes in and she just looks against these either up and coming fighters or former champs. And Weili Zhang, she does have the better resume, so that's what I'm saying. Like I think Tatiana Suarez could have a resume to be more comparable to Weili Zhang's. But that being said, like I think Tatiana Suarez offers just a legit wrestling and grappling threat, and Weili Zhang, I think she can fare off well on the ground, but I think Tatiana Suarez may still be get the edge over her just for being slightly bigger than her as well. And on the feet, I think on the feet, Weili Zhang may be a little bit faster for sure, but Tatiana Suarez does have hands. She does look good on the feet as well. So I think that will be the moments that I think where Weili Zhang shines the most will be mostly on the feet with the kickboxing. But I think Tatiana Suarez, she probably will get pieced up. There definitely will be blood from both of them at some point. And I just truly think it's going to come down to Tatiana Suarez having more control time and out wrestling Weili Zhang over anything. So I think Tatiana Suarez will win this, and I just don't think she'll finish Weili Zhang though. But I think she'll win this by decision. So obviously, like if she doesn't finish it, but I don't even know if I want to say unanimous. I do think it's going to be a close one, but I'm leaning towards Tatiana Suarez on this one. And I just thought because she's not as active as Weili Zhang, like I would have thought Weili Zhang would have been the automatic favorite in this one. She's champ. She has the bigger resume. She's a lot more active than Tatiana Suarez. But Tatiana Suarez is for some reason still the slight favorite in this one. Regardless, like I would choose her whether she was the favorite or underdog, no matter what. Just pure off, like just be based off her skills. And I do think this is just another one of those fighters where they're really good and established. And Tatiana Suarez will show like, hey, like I'm at this level, even though you don't see me as often. I do, I think it's almost her due time to become champ. Is what I'm saying. So this one, I have the same rank as you. I'm at 3, but I'm going with Tatiana Suarez on this one.
Sounds good, man. So we will disagree, but honestly, it doesn't sound like we disagree too heavily on too much, other than kind of obviously the end outcome. You can understand the value there and understand the fact that Whaley should probably be the favorite, and it's just a matter of I respect Suarez and a lot of what Suarez brings, and even as I mentioned, a potential game plan of Whaley being offensively aggressive in the wrestling game, that's going to open herself up for a lot of risk, man. You don't want to risk too much. When it comes to a belt, I don't know how much you really want to risk putting yourself in the guard of Tatiana Suarez. At this point, you kind of just stay where your advantage is. But I don't know, man. Jane Lee's nuts, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if she just kind of did like a Corey Sandhagen and just like sat on top and just kind of did slow damage. Had like 2.5, 3 minutes control time, win the round, move on.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. That's pretty much how I think the fight will turn out.
But yeah, that said, we can move on then. Since that's both of our three weights, we can move on to Jose's two weight.
So for my 2 weight, this is actually going to the prelims, and it is thus as of right now, it looks like this will be the main event up for the prelims on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus. It's going to be the featherweight bout between Jack Jenkins and Gabriel Santos. Right now, Gabriel Santos is a betting favorite at -245, while Jack Jenkins is the betting underdog at 186. This one, I'm talking about it because just the main cards, like how I did not talk about that heavyweight fight. So this one I'm bringing up just because I thought it was the most interesting fight as well outside of that. And I like Gabriel Santos in this one. Purely just because he's a finisher, he's gonna get the submissions, and Jack Jenkins, he's a pretty good finisher as well. But I just don't think like he's 31. I just don't think that his how he stacks up against Gabriel Santos is just one of those where I'm not feeling as good. I think feeling as confident about, just because I think on the feet both guys are gonna go crazy, but I think Gabriel Santos throws just harder hits, and he does leave himself a little more open as well to be clipped. He does get tagged a bit. I just think he's gonna almost run down Jack Jenkins in this one, and I think it's almost gonna be like a similar type of thing with like Tatiana Suarez. I think he's just gonna almost walk him down to some degree and submit him. I think he's probably just gonna go on and get a submission, or he can just win this unanimously. I'm not whether he gets a knockout or not. I don't view it that way. Out of his 11 wins, he's only got 3 KOs as TKOs, but he's shown he can do it. He's got a knockout, not in the UFC as of yet. But he does have them, and he himself does leave himself open though. He's been knocked out for the first time as well by David Anima in June 2023 as well. So and then this one, Jack, we've seen Jack. He's been KO'd as well before Jack Jenkins, and he's been submitted twice. So I think that's where Gabriel Santos is really going to shine. I think he's just going to be the better grappler in this one. I think he's at some point try to to get a hold of his neck and probably go for us. I would just say like it's probably going to be like a guillotine, and if he can get his back, maybe a rear naked choke. Early on in his career, he seems like to have been a really more on the rear naked choke side, so I can see that possibly Jack Jenkins falling victim to that. And he has been rear naked choke in the past many years ago, and I'm sure he's really good defending off his back. But I think Gabriel Santos is just overall going to be a more physical fighter. He's going to be the more physically opposing fighter in this one. And again, I view this similar to like Tatiana Suarez in her approach, but I don't view Jack Jenkins like Weili Zhang at all. So I think Gabriel Santos will just implement that game plan. he will be more willfully like imposing on that game plan, if that makes sense. Like I think he's almost gonna dominate is what I'm trying to say. So that being said, yeah, I got Gabriel Santos. He is my two weight because Jack Jenkins is just a tough guy too, and he has slightly more UFC experience, but not that much. That being said, his that one loss to Jose is due to the injury, so it was like kind of a weird TKO type of thing, but those injury ones are just tough, but it's still a loss on his record. And so that being said, this one I got Gabriel Santos, but he is my 2-8 because I think Jack Jenkins, that one injury again I don't think is too true and legit on his record, and he can still get this win obviously. So I got Gabriel Santos as my 2-8. Do you have any thoughts on this fight, Nick?
So I don't have an official weight, but I do have just mainly the opinion that I didn't leave this one on here because I still have some faith in Jack Jenkins, man. I might have to say this would be a disagreement if I was to make a pick, just because of the slight, like, I like the fact that Jack Jenkins is the dog at plus 186. I feel like that's some good value on a guy whose one loss right now is Chepe Mariscal, who I'm a big fan of. So maybe there's a little bias involved, but I'm a big fan of Chepe. I think he's a dog. I think he's going to be kind of a guy that's going to be tough to put away for a long time coming. And it's not a bad loss to have on your record, in my opinion. I like what Jack Jenkins is bringing to the table, but there's no doubt that Gabriel Santos poses a lot of threat, man. And that's why I didn't put it as a pick on my board, because in the end, man, I do have a lot of respect for Gabriel Santos. I totally see where you're coming from. He's also got the bigger frame, so that could really come in handy if there's some grappling exchanges. But yeah, that said, Jose's got Gabriel Santos as his 2-weight, and we're going to go to my 2-weight of Saturday afternoon, which is actually going to be the main event finally. We're going to be discussing Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis, the second, the rematch. Of course, these guys fought last year, 2024, January, so it's actually over a year ago, even though it was last year. And in which case, Sean Strickland lost. He put a lot of strikes down. Of course, he won the statistics, but lost via split decision. And since Dricus has been able to defend his belt against Izzy, and now he's going to be fighting Sean again. And in all reality, Dana said it, and in my opinion too, the winner of this fight should be fighting Khamzat, because this is going to be Khamzat's belt. So this is really just consolation match to see who fights Khamzat next, if you ask me. But in any case, Dricus du Plessis, man, what value can you find? And it's crazy, man. I would love to look, and Jose kind of briefly talked about it before the show. But man, the fact that Dricus is such a heavy favorite here, minus 225, that's a lot. I get that he is the current champ, but man, I gotta say, my pick is Dricus, right? 2-weight on Dricus to make it official. But wow, it's not at all because I find value in that money line. In fact, I wouldn't touch that with a 2-mile pole, man. Minus 225 against Strickland is really tough. But thing is, man, I just don't think, like, with what Strickland brought in the first fight, I don't think it's going to be a whole lot different. He's literally the same guy in pretty much every single fight. And it's really, I think it's going to get, like, I hate to say, like, figured out. Like, Strickland's just going to drop off. But I just don't think, I think it's enough where you can watch enough tape, and if you fight a guy enough, like, you're going to have his number. And I really do think that it's going to be a Dricus situation here. I think Dricus is going to change his game plan a little bit more than Sean Strickland's going to change. And I think that's going to be for the better. I don't think we're going to see quite as much of a disparity in strikes landed in this next fight. And in all reality, Dricus landed some good damage on Sean. So I don't know who quite won the damage in the first fight. But in the end, the judges agree that Dricus won. And I think we're going to see something similar here. I would definitely, like, I'm assuming the over is going to be 4.5. I highly doubt that the line is any less than that, because these guys just traditionally don't finish each other, which is wild, though, because outside of each other, Dricus du Plessis finished Izzy, he finished Whitaker, he finished Eric Brunson, he finished Darren Till, right? Like, he's finishing all these guys, but he doesn't finish Sean Strickland. I could see that same thing happening. These dudes are hard to put out. And the style of fighting that Sean Strickland has is just not conducive of really many knockouts, because he's always going to hit you back. He's always ready to go. He's got great defensive boxing, and it's also not easy taking him down. So that said, I'm riding with Dricus to keep his belt here. 2-weight pick. I think there's good value, not good value on the line, but I think he's just in a good spot here. I think he's in a good spot matchup wise. And I don't, obviously as an American, I want Strickland to win, but I got to pick who I think is going to win. What do you think, Jose?
This one, yeah, I agree with you. I got Duplessis as well. He is my one way on this one. And the reason is just because yeah, as you mentioned, like Sean Strickland and both these guys are finishers, and Sean Strickland, he's got phenomenal striking, and he's been training with Alex Pereira as well. So I can like, and he's shown to be better since he started doing that, and it seems like they just like continue to keep training together. So I think that definitely just adds like a lot of value to him in terms of like him making a really being an extremely tough opponent against Strickis Duplessis. And his last two fights, losing one to split and then coming another one to split, I'm sure he already knows like he needs to probably up it up a little more. Like that Paulo Costa fight, it looked like he was a little conservative like up until the end where he started getting a little more loose, and that's because he wants. I think he really likes to put on a pace on his opponents and then walk them down, kind of like how he did against Nasruddin Imavov and Abus Magomedov when he's fought them. He wants them to kind of tire out, and then he'll start kind of breaking away and start really letting loose. And I think he wanted to do that to Dracus Duplessis, but Duplessis, he's just got phenomenal conditioning, and I think he can go all day. He can definitely go more than 5 rounds, I think. And as you mentioned, like they're probably just holding the belt for Kamza. I think honestly, I would like to see Duplessis versus Kamza. I think he would just be a little more diverse. Sean Strickland actually does have good grappling. He's actually got 4 submissions, and he does have he did get some in the UFC as well. It's just been a minute, but I think just as of like more actively, more recently, Duplessis is kind of showing like with him getting that face crank on Izzy Adesanya, and then he also got another face crank on Darren Till a few years ago. So I think in this one, like I wouldn't be surprised like the going gets tough if it ends up on the ground. He's gonna try to take Sean Strickland's back, try to get a face crank on it because it seems like I mean, face cranks really suck and like they hurt a lot. And it's one of those where like it sucks to tap to as well because you would rather tap to a choke or go out. But like with those, it's like you can literally break your jawline, like kind of like how Kamzat did to Robert Whitaker. So it's like you almost have to tap to almost save yourself, even if you feel like it doesn't hurt as much or you're not going to go out. It's just sometimes you have to do it to save yourself. So I can see that being an instance. I can see him doing that. And like it seems like it's working for him. Like he doesn't care like to get the neck. He just wants to get the crank. So if the fight ever does go to the ground, I think Strickland will be good enough to probably defend it. But I think maybe in the later rounds, like if Strickland gets tired himself, it's just going to be I think a game of who gets tired faster. I guess that's what I'm saying. Yeah, who gets tired sooner? Because whoever has the better cardio in this matchup, I think is going to win for sure. Both guys have phenomenal cardio, and I don't see either or. It's hard for me to say who would finish who. So I'm just gonna have to go with Duplessis, and I don't even know if it's gonna be unanimous win. So he is my one weight, and I got Dricus Duplessis, and I would not be surprised if this is another split decision loss for Strickland. So that being said, yeah, I got Duplessis, but he's my one weight. We all know what both these guys bring to the table. We've seen it before. I think it may be slightly similar to the first time.
Yeah, man. Honestly, though, I think you're onto something. Like, I respect Sean Strickland. I'm such a big fan of his that I'm not. I'm happy if he wins the fight. Like I said, I'm just trying to predict who wins, and I just think there's a little bit more of a dynamic side. You might be right though, because you're definitely right that Strickland's game plan in general is to gas someone out and abuse the fact that they're tired. And he probably learned that he isn't gonna be able to do that with Dricus. So maybe he changes it a little bit, but in the end, I just don't see Sean coming out and doing much other than his typical step forward and his typical, he just gets his hands up high and he just boxes. I don't really see him shooting takedowns or anything like that. And that said, I don't think a whole lot varies from what we saw in the first fight to this one.
Yeah, 100. Could not agree anymore. Nail hit it like nail on the head.
So that said, by my count, we only have one fight remaining. That's all of our weights besides my one weight, which is actually going to be on the Slava clause. Vyacheslav Borshev, one of my favorite names to say in the UFC. I love that name. I love the guy, and he's a fighter that I, of course, have as my one weight, as I'm slightly less confident than all of my other picks. Tom Nolan is his opponent, and Tom Nolan's one of the guys that deals a lot of damage, but also takes a lot of damage. Tom Nolan does have 2 KOs in his 4 UFC fights, but one of them is a Dana White Contender Series fight. So in our reality, he's got 3 UFC fights. 2 of them finished with KOs, and one of those was him getting KO'd. So he's 1-1, and I really just think Slavaclaus is a little bit of a technical like game above. You know, I understand Slavaclaus has had a little bit of a tough time. He's too well. If he had a draw, majority decision draw against Nazim Sadikov. So in all reality, he's what is he, 2-3-1 in his last 6. So I understand that doesn't look the greatest. Slavaclaus is really technical. He's not the kind of guy who's going to land huge power shots. He's got a couple KOs under his belt. But the thing is Slavaclaus is not going to get KO'd. Slavaclaus has the chin of iron. I believe that he will not be KO'd. Slavaclaus, he's just a tough guy. He's going to grit it out. He's going to win by points, in my opinion, to be specific. Slavaclaus, I like him in this fight. I really do, and he's minus 150, so he is a favorite on Tom Nolan. The public agrees that he should be favored. I think that's good value there. Tom Nolan has okay, so he's got a few wins under his belt, but they're all kind of nobodies, if I'm being honest. And at least Slavaclaus losing to like Chase Hooper and some other good fighters. You know, Mike Davis is pretty decent too. He almost just beat Fares Ziam. So that said, I'm going with the Slavaclaus here as a decently confident one weight. Jose, what do you think?
This one, so I don't have a pick on this one, but I like Slavaclaus a lot. Dude's wild, like, and I like his striking a lot. So this one, I have not seen enough of his opponent Tom Nolan, to be honest. But it seems like Tom Nolan, you know, he's been on a tear as of lately. Getting 2 back-to-back wins, and he's been, you know, he's only had 3 fights in the UFC, and one with Dana White's Contender Series, which he won. So yeah, I'm saying like, this is going to be a really fun fight to see. And even though Slavaclaus, he lost to Chase Hooper like by the submission, I think in this one, like, yeah, it's going to be all on the feet. And I like how Slava is just on the feet. So this one, I lean towards him as well for this one. But I don't have a pick on this one overall as a ranking. But I am leaning towards Slavaclaus as well.
All right. Well, that's all I need then is a little bit of a lean there. May not be an official weight, but Jose does agree a little bit there on Slavaclaus. And with that, I believe that's 9 total fights breaking down there of the 13 on the card. So can't ask for much more content there. Almost all the fights have been covered. Yeah, with that said, that's going to complete our night here at Moneyline MMA. Thanks everybody for listening. We will have a streak of UFC fights coming up. I think there's like 8 more weekends with continuous UFC cards. So make sure to subscribe. Let us know down below who you agree or disagree with. And make sure to come back every Monday afternoon around 5:30 in the afternoon or so. And we'll be live discussing the next week's fights and the results from the previous weekend. So that's it. Have a good one, and thanks for listening.